What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Mike Sasser, boudoir photographer in Los Angeles, California, and today I'm going to be critiquing some of these subscriber photos. That's right, I'm going to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, the rights, the wrongs, the my opinion doesn't really matter, shoot what you want, I believe in you. You guys sent in a ton of submissions. I am so grateful for everybody who sent in their photos. I know that it can be scary and vulnerable to send your pictures in for the whole internet to see, much less be critiqued in front of a lot of different photographers. So I really appreciate you being a part of this. Thank you for sending in your photos. Just a few things before we really get into the critique. And the first thing is that I get a lot of questions. People ask me on Instagram if I'll critique their photos. And I don't really do that. I do have a paid option for portfolio reviews, but I really like doing these critiques here because through YouTube, I can critique one person's photo and many people get something out of it. Now, if you submitted a picture and you don't see it throughout this critique, don't worry, there's two reasons why that might be. One is I probably really liked it, and those pictures I'm going to show at the very end of this video. The second reason is that if there was a critique that I was planning to give on your photo that was similar to another person's photo, I just didn't have time to go through and critique every single person's pictures if a few of those similar tips and corrections applied to both pictures. And number three, if you're disappointed that you didn't know that there was an option to send me pictures for a critique like this, there are 3 different places that you can go to make sure that you never miss another opportunity like this. The first is gonna be to follow me on Instagram. That is where I'm posting new photos almost every day, little tips and requests for help with things like my YouTube videos and things like this. The second is gonna be my free Facebook group for photographers. That's another place where I requested photos for this critique. That group is also amazing because I'm doing lives and asking the photographers in there for ideas on what to put in all of my photography courses. And the third place is my incredible newsletter. I send out emails with tips and tricks and videos that I can't even really share on YouTube. In all of these places, I reach out and try to connect with you so that you can be part of things like this. And finally, all of these critiques are all my opinion. Not everybody's going to agree on the same thing. That's what's so beautiful about art. So if you like my advice, beautiful, take it. If you don't, that's totally okay too. And with that, let's jump into the photos. All right, let's start off with our very first picture, and actually not necessarily a critique, but I wanna show you guys how I do this censorship line here. For all the photos that I wanna put up on Instagram, but maybe it's got something in there that I need to censor, this is how I do it. So just in the brush, I'm pretty sure this is a built-in Kyle's Ultimate Palooza Dry Media brushes. This is the one, and then I just, find a spot, paint over it, usually with black. Sometimes I'll do it with color similar to their skin, but that's basically how I get it to look nice. And I just think it's interesting and painterly and still has a little bit of art without having like the little blurry pixelated sort of things. And now you know. So there's a lot in this photo that I really like. I think the posing of the arm here is really well done. I think this arm coming over this way is really well done. I think the lighting is actually quite beautiful, laying out in the field. So you're framing her, the composition, framing her here, I think is also really beautiful. There's basically 2 things that I would focus on that I would change when looking at this photograph. And the first is this scrunch of her forehead. In this photo, I'm being really picky about it actually, but what happens a lot is when people tilt their head back, they often raise their eyebrows up and they get all these little crinkle lines in their forehead. So the way you do it, you just have to relax those eyebrows. So just tilt your chin back, eyes closed, and just relax your eyebrows. Sometimes if they're like peeking down and they look up at you, they'll kind of look up like this, and that adds, again, all of these crinkles. So when they're peeking, just have them look up at you without raising their eyebrows. Just keep those relaxed. And the second thing, this will probably be a constant thing throughout the different photos, is to add a touch of contrast. So let's go ahead and add contrast with my favorite, curves. Curves are super powerful. If you don't know too much about it, there are tons of videos. I would just, after watching this video, go check one out. But the short version is the right side of the center line is going to affect more of the bright areas. The left side of this line is going to affect more of the dark areas. So if we want to basically do as if in Lightroom we're dragging the blacks slider and bringing that down, we're going to bring this over this way. That's going to add a nice little contrast, but now it's a little too dark, so let's brighten up everything. So here is before and after. Look at how much more depth and crispness and clarity this photo gets. I mean, it's really, really a lot. The other thing that you can do if you wanted to brighten up her face, you could do another curves layer, and we're gonna bring it up, and then we're just gonna invert it, Command-I. With our brush, we're just going to paint over this area and brighten it up a little bit. Just because her legs are so bright and her face is a little bit more in shadow. So again, here's before, and here's after. So again, to recap, relax those eyebrows, and if you're wondering if you get more contrast in your photos, you probably can. Wow, this photo is absolutely stunning. I mean, I'm just gonna run through all of the different things that I really love about this picture. So first of all, the general framing that's taking place inside the mirror, that's a beautiful layer. We've got the framing of seeing her in the foreground here. That's another beautiful layer. The colors here that match with the color of her outfit, that's also really amazing. Okay, I just really like using this little thing on screen, so forgive me if I do it too much. You know what, I'm not gonna apologize for that. Just, it's my video, I get to do what I want. The two things that I would do in this picture are, first, the overall exposure I think is a little bit bright. If I was in Lightroom, I might grab the exposure slider and drag that down, but in Photoshop, we are gonna do another curves and just bring the overall exposure down a little bit. Then we're gonna do as well, we're gonna bring the blacks in a little bit here to add that punch of contrast. And here is before and after. Look at also how much more rich the colors become as you do that. The next thing is we've got all this beautiful warm light here on the subject. All of this is absolutely stunning. However, this area up here is super blue. It's also extremely bright, and your eye typically goes to the area of the picture that has the most contrast. It might be a super, super bright spot, and maybe a spot where bright and dark are right next to each other. But in this example, up here on the left is extremely bright. So we're gonna do two things. One is we're gonna do another curves layer. Every time I say curves, you guys take a shot. And we're gonna darken it exactly. And then we're gonna try and take some of this blue area and we'll open up the blue section of the curve and we'll bring this down a little bit. And see how it's kind of getting really yellow green? Maybe it's getting a little too green, so let's open up the green and we'll pull this down a little bit. So now again, we're gonna invert this, Command-I, and then we're gonna take our brush and paint over it so that it's going to get darker and warmer. Now take a look at the before and the after. You can see how this part of the image now kind of blends in with the rest of the photo. That's what we're looking for. Now it's much easier to focus on her in the center of the frame. You guys sent in such good pictures. I'm like really having to be pretty picky about these, but I think these little details are really gonna help you guys get to the next level. But let's take a look at the two things in this picture that I would correct. So the first is her lips are closed. Now I'm kind of more of an open mouth photographer. I don't think that's like a coined term or anything. I don't think you're like, there's two kinds of photographers in this world. You've got your open mouth photographers and your closed mouth photographers, and there's not enough room in this town for the both of us. However, I do most of my photos with the lips parted. And the reason that the way that I explain this, it's like, you're talking to your client, you're saying, okay, I want you to breathe through your mouth for a lot of these. And they're like, huh, why is that? I thought I was supposed to keep my mouth closed. I thought it was more proper. In this situation, I say, if your significant other was kissing your neck, okay, let's assume they're doing it correctly, you know? Let's assume they know what they're doing and they're kissing your neck. Is your mouth open or closed in that scenario? Probably you're breathing through your mouth. So it adds a little bit of suggestion and fits in more with these boudoir style photographs. The second thing is, we don't really see her leg here. We only see a little bit of a foot. And typically what you wanna do is create length with your clients. You want their legs to look really long. You wanna get a sense, we don't wanna kind of chop off limbs, so just have like just up here to the knee. We want to see where that leg goes. So in a perfect world, this would go over here like this. We'd have her leg pointed and extended and her toe pointed. So I'm just going to draw that real quick so you guys can see the artistic beauty that is. There's the pointed toe up here. So that's kind of ideally, you guys get it. You guys get it. I'll flash a picture up so you can see. Then actually the final thing I might suggest, so because the light is coming from over here, which is creating these beautiful highlight, shadow, highlight, shadow, highlight, shadow. You guys know I love this stuff. Because it's coming that way, but you've got white sheets on the bed, this is so bright. This is so bright. And then the contrast in her body doesn't really pop. It doesn't really come through because relative to the body, the sheets are so bright. So what I like to do instead is buy dark sheets. You know, maybe there's like this classic timeless kind of feel to the white sheet photos, but I really like the dark sheets because the skin I think really pops up against them like a dark charcoal, something like that. So think about getting this for your studio and see how that may change what your images look like. It's a good picture. It's a really good picture. I mean, everything in this, the detail in her hair, the arch of her back, her arms coming up, how gentle her hands are, that's absolutely beautiful. The one thing, if this were me, I would add more contrast. I would be trying to look in my photos and see any sort of situation that I can add a little bit more pop. We're gonna do that, you guessed it, with levels. No, we're gonna do it with curves. Okay, so remember, the right side of the histogram is gonna affect the bright. So let's go over here and we'll go, we don't wanna go too much because then we're gonna clip all of this detail here. So we're gonna go until we're no longer kind of clipping detail there, which is about here. And then we're gonna do a little baby S curve. Something like this. Okay, so here's before and here's after. Now, look at how much this dark blue glows. We get more detail in her hair. We've got more contrast here between the light parts of her skin and the dark parts of her skin. I think it's just more three-dimensional. And that's one of the things that I really love about photographs is the way they can feel like they're coming off of the screen or they're jumping out of the sheet of paper. And so really getting your contrast right, being able to stretch that histogram, being able to get the brights really bright and the darks really dark while still being able to see detail is gonna help your images have more pop. Wow. Another amazing picture, another beautiful one. If we're talking about the things that are working, we've got the toe point like we discussed in the previous image, wasn't quite there, so this is absolutely perfect. We've got arch back. We even have a little bit of a reflection here, which is a beautiful way to add a little bit of dimension to it. If I were to pick two things to be really picky on, the first is the hair. She's got a lot of hair. And the more hair that you can show in the image, I think that can really add to your boudoir photos. I'm not saying necessarily that you need a lot of hair for it to be a sexy boudoir picture, but if they have it, incorporate it, bring it in, put it on top of her hand here. Maybe you bring the elbow down, so instead of it coming out this way, it goes down like this and then out here, and then we can actually see the hair. This is her hair, right? So that's something to think about in every single one of your boudoir pictures. The next thing is, it looks like she's got kind of a little bit of a warmer skin tone here, but the outside looks a little bit more blue, a little bit cooler. And this happens anytime you're using inside lights with the light of the sun or outdoors or cloudiness coming into the room. So the first thing that I always do is turn off any and all light sources that are inside the house if we're also getting sunlight or dusk light or anything like that coming in from the windows. If you still need light on your subject, you can use a reflector. So the window light is coming in, gonna bounce on that reflector and bounce back on your subject. Or you can buy daylight balanced light sources in order to match with the daylight. And the last thing you can do is change your picture to black and white. So black and white will take out any of those inconsistencies between the cooler tones and the lighter tones. And the only thing that matters now are the bright areas and the dark areas. So guess what we're gonna do? Curves. Now what's nice about black and white is that you don't have to, we're gonna bring this over a little bit more here, bam. You can get a little bit more extreme with your black and whites because for some reason the clipping on the white doesn't look as bad with black and white. I don't know the reason, but here is before and here's after. And then also without this curves and with the curves. Look how it just like cuts out all of the haze. It's such a good system. All right, this is a great shot. I hope I'm allowed to post this Madonna book. I hope that if somebody doesn't sue me. You think Madonna would sue me for putting her book in my YouTube video? Probably not. However, I love the book as a prop. I actually just did a photo shoot like this. I'll throw up some of those images now. However, I think she looks a little uncomfortable in this pose. I think the reason that is a few things. One is it's a computer chair. I'm in a computer chair. It's sort of like propped up for getting stuff done. You lean back into it, you use the lumbar support, it's great. But if you're gonna sit up a little bit further, it looks like she's specifically trying to sit in that pose, more so than it looks like you caught her hanging out and reading a book, which is a lot of the reason why somebody would be holding a book in the first place. So think about this in terms of congruency. Does it make sense? What are the reasons that they would be in the position that they're in? So let's talk about her hand. She's holding the book close to her chest, but really it looks like she's just doing that to cover it as an outfit, more so than it looks like she was reading and you called her name and she looked up. So some other possible ideas that I would do for this pose are, one is completely leaning back and holding the book a little bit further out so that it looks like she could just be peeking up and the book just so happens to be covering her chest. So you kind of lean up against this armrest and be holding the book. Let me maybe use my iPad as an example. This floppy cover. She'd be like leaning up against it and kind of holding it here, and so when she looks up, again, the book is covering, but it again looks like she was actually in the process of reading. So these are just a couple things to think about with, you know, when you're setting up your poses. Does this feel believable? Would they be doing this in this setting? Now, obviously, a lot of boudoir pictures, I just did a photo shoot on a Vespa in my last video. There's no reason for her to be sitting on a Vespa in lingerie other than to pose for a photo. But I think approaching photography and your posing and your props with this idea in mind of congruency, of would she be doing this regularly? Does this look natural? Does it look like I caught her in a moment? It's one of the reasons people say that my photos look really authentic and really honest. And I would also probably add a little bit of contrast. Just my thing. All right, this is absolutely stunning. Wow. Yeah, seriously, the submissions this time around were really, really amazing. So I'm really trying hard to share things that to be really picky to help you guys out. So again, things that I like, look at this out of focus beading, all these lights. This is really beautiful. Delicate, soft hands, curled fingers are really nice. The pose, bring her front leg in here. That's something that I often do in my posing. So 10 out of 10 there. Two things that I would change are, one is her neck is pretty turned, and two things are happening. One is it's scrunching up her neck, and it doesn't actually look that kind of comfortable in there. It doesn't look as natural for her to be turning her neck that far that way. So there's a few different ways that you can correct this. One is bring the hair a little bit more forward, and then that will cover any of the tension that's shown in the neck. The next way, you just tilt your chin up a little bit more. That'll stretch out a little bit of the skin. And the other thing is, this is a vertical picture, and this is, here, somewhere in here is the line where the picture ends and the background of Photoshop begins. I can't really see where that is. And typically I would say that's too black. She kind of looks like she's floating in space here, and I like to see a little bit more of the environment. So for me personally, I know I've been saying everybody's pictures are too dark, too dark, too dark, but I would bring this up just a little bit, but not on the really bright areas. So something like this. So now we can see a little bit of this textured background. We're getting a little bit of a sense of where she is in space before and after. Again, this is all personal preference. Maybe you shoot ultra dark, ultra moody, and this is your signature style. Amazing. For me, I think this is a little bit pushed too far on the extreme on that pendulum to too dark. Okay, very beautiful image, and I'll tell you a couple of things that I love about it. The first is, look at all of the motion we have here. Hair and the arm and the leg coming out this way, and the blanket is swinging down this way. This is a really good use of composition, using the elements to create flow in your image. So I think absolutely nailed it there. It's really cute to see, not cute, but this blanket is one of the blankets that I first used when I first started shooting boudoir. And I mean, every single person bought every single photo with this blanket. Now that I've moved into my new space, I haven't used it as much, but it's awesome to see that this is still getting used and people are loving it. The two things for this one are going to be, big surprise, Michael. We're gonna do a little bit of this, but you're gonna see. So I'm gonna do this, but I'm gonna take take my brush and have it not do the blanket, because the blanket is gonna be too bright, but I want the rest of the picture to brighten up. All right, before and after. Again, just pop. It looks like I just took an extra light and I put another extra light on there. So that's the first thing that I would do. The second thing I would do is, if you take a look at the hands, they're really straight and really tense almost, the way that she's holding it. This may have something to do with her nails, but I really try and create a softness in all of my photographs, which she has with the way that her hair is coming down, with the breathing through the mouth. Her eyes are really relaxed. This hand is sort of soft, the way it's rested. You can see it's sort of like her fingers are being pulled back by the floor, which is showing how there's not that much tension in her hand. So a lot of these things are actually doing that. But this hand in particular, in order to hold that outfit up, is very strong and very stiff. So what I recommend doing here is just relax it. If she's got to hold it up, do it with the palm of her hand, boom. Do that so that you can see some of the softness in her hands. Curl up those fingers almost anywhere they are, nice and soft. The only time I would say you really want tension in your hands is if you're like pulling on an outfit, or like maybe grabbing a leg and like putting some pressure in there so that you can see you're really passionate about what you're doing. Anything else, things like this, softness is gonna be key. All right, beautiful photo. We're working with the parted lips. That looks good. Soft hands, just like we talked about. The lingerie looks nice. But if you remember in one of the first photos that we talked about, this very, very bright area is going to draw all of our attention towards this and not very much on the subject. In addition to that, we have light stands in the background. So this is something that can be when you're first starting to shoot and you're going through and you're trying to focus on a zillion things, my exposure and my lighting and the posing and her soft hands and her breathing through her mouth, and is there lingerie untangled, and all of these things, we can lose sight of our backgrounds. So it looks like this is a photo studio, and maybe that's part of the point, to show that you're actually at a photo studio. But what I would do is I would take this light and I would bring it and I would put it all the way over here. And then when I'm taking a picture of her, I would crop it something like this. So now we still have the light on her. It's going to light her up, look really amazing, but it's not going to be a distracting piece of the background. Let's go ahead and put some curves in there, and before and after. I mean, really, curves are like the best, greatest, most incredible, unbelievable, astronomical. I don't know. Those are all the words I can think of right now. All right, very cool shot. Remember how I was talking about dark sheets? Look at what we have here. We've got some dark sheets, and they aren't overpowering the scene, which is great. They're nice and dark and they blend in. However, the way this photo is set up is we've got photographer, and then client, and then window, all in a direct straight line. And this setup is typically used for silhouettes. So if you're unfamiliar with silhouettes or lighting or the light triangle or how to shoot dark and moody or how to use natural light, front lit, back lit, side lit, all of these things, I'm gonna put 2 of those videos, just little previews of them on the side here. You can check out those links in the description to help you out. They might be the most helpful lighting videos you guys ever watch for Boudoir. But in this situation, because the window is coming from behind the subject, she's not getting any of the good light. She's not getting any of the good light. She's not lit up. She's got incredible tattoos. We can't see any of those tattoos, which is okay. But if you're setting it up like this, what's most important is their silhouette, is their outline, the shape of their body, and how we can see that. What I mean by that is, you can see down here, this little gap, right here, this is what we want to see more of. We want to build this triangle. So if this hand is coming out like this, and then in here, we'll be able to get a nice big triangle here. You can see her nose is sort of being blocked by her arms, so we can't really get as much of the shape there. Here's a good example. Here is, we're sort of losing the detail here, whereas here is, we can see the shape and the outline. So when you're doing your silhouette pictures, you really, really want to focus on what that outline is going to be and how you can make that as dramatic as possible to get the most impact in your photos. Beautiful. So here's another mirror shot. And you guys, on the mirror shots, really keep an eye on whether or not we can see you in the background, because we normally can. So I know you try to get out of it, but here's this camera strap. So that's something that I can take away from the picture a little bit. So keep an eye on that. The next thing is, as far as the framing goes, so in that first reflection shot we had, Our subject was right in the center. She was being framed by a little bit of the person on the side, but some flowers, the big beautiful lines on the mirror, and some space on the left that really just centered you into her. In this particular case, we've got this big outline here that's not particularly interesting. It's not like a beautiful out of focus. It's just sort of really big. It takes up a lot of visual weight on this side, as well as this line, which I'm not gonna be able to draw straight, so don't make fun of me, is a little bit of an angle like this. So we kind of have this weird shape that's taking place and framing her. So compositionally, this doesn't add as much interest as that earlier one. So what you're gonna wanna do to correct this is just have her move over to the right a pretty significant amount, or you could recrop it into something a little bit more like this. Now she's a little bit more centered, she's a little bit more evenly framed between the left and the right side, but bummer. Now we see your hand even more. Holy crap, that was absolutely amazing going through all those pictures and bringing out little details to help you guys out with your photography. Now I'm gonna pop up some of the pictures here that I really loved. Thank you so much again for submitting those. I really want you guys to be able to be included in things like this, so definitely don't forget to follow me on Instagram to hear about the next one of these or things similar. You're gonna wanna hop into that Facebook group again for more live chats with other photographers. I'm sharing tips and tricks in that Facebook group and doing live behind the scenes shoots. And that exclusive newsletter is gonna send you tips and tricks and other videos that I can't share here on YouTube. Ugh. You guys think I yawn more than a normal person? Is it just because I'm talking a lot? Should I go see a doctor? Do you guys yawn like anytime you start talking? Or do I just need a nap? Maybe I just need a nap. Oh.